Ever wondered why some people, no matter how educated they seem, keep making the same poor decisions over and over again? It's not about I quits, about wisdom. You can spot them from a mile away. People who resist change, blame everyone else, and act like they know it all. But what if I told you these aren't just bad habits, they're signs of something deeper? Sometimes, the greatest lesson in life is not what you know, but how open you are to learning what you don't. And that's where the true divide between wisdom and foolishness begins. Over the years of quietly observing people, how they speak, how they react, and how they treat others, they've come to realize something powerful. Intelligence isn't just about how many facts you can recite or how many degrees hang on your wall. Real intelligence, true wisdom, is reflected in how you live your life, how you handle your failures, how you treat those around you, and, importantly, how you grow from your mistakes. But here's the twist. There are clear signs that show when someone is, let's say, not quite on the path of wisdom. There are 6 of them, and once you know what to look for, you'll start seeing them everywhere, at work, in relationships, and maybe even in your own reflection. Now, before you roll your eyes or assume this is just another judgmental list, let me be clear, this isn't about pointing fingers. It's about self-awareness. It's about growth. And yes, it's also about learning how to avoid falling into these traps ourselves. These signs serve as both warnings and lessons because recognizing foolishness isn't just about avoiding it in others, but identifying it within ourselves when it begins to take root. And sometimes, understanding these behaviors can help someone else who doesn't even realize they're stuck. So, if you're ready, walk with me. Let's uncover the first unmistakable sign of a foolish person, a trait that can quietly ruin careers, damage relationships, and limit every opportunity for growth. A closed mind. A closed mind is like a fortress built from bricks of fear, ego, and stubbornness. From the outside, it might look strong and yielding, but inside, it's dark, cramped, and unable to expand. People with closed minds don't just reject new ideas, they actively block their own evolution. Take Mark, for instance. He was a department manager at a company I worked for. A smart man, no doubt, but stuck in his ways. When a younger team member proposed using a modern project management tool to boost efficiency, Mark shut it down without even considering the benefits. His response? "We've done it this way for 10 years. It works just fine." Except it wasn't working. While other teams embraced change and surged ahead, Mark's team lagged behind. Their performance dipped, their morale dropped, and instead of facing the issue, Mark blamed everything else: his team, the market, even luck. But never once did he question his own outdated mindset. This is the danger of a closed mind. It doesn't just stop new ideas, slowly suffocates the potential of everyone around it. In contrast, truly wise people are humble. They know they don't know everything, and they don't pretend to. They welcome growth. They seek it out. As Stoic philosophy teaches us, wisdom isn't about always being right, it's about being willing to change when you're wrong. It's about adapting, improving, and choosing learning over ego. So ask yourself, do you welcome change, or do you cling to comfort? Do you listen to new perspectives, or immediately shut them down? If you see signs of this in yourself, for someone at work, know this: embracing innovation isn't just about staying relevant, it's about becoming better. It's about creating an environment where everyone, including yourself, can grow. Be bold enough to say, "I was wrong." Be wise enough to say, "I can learn." Ready for the next sign? Let's keep walking. Sometimes, the greatest change begins when we admit we don't know everything. We talked about the closed mind, that mental fortress built from fear and pride. But once that wall begins to crumble, another truth starts to emerge. Real wisdom also requires accountability. And that brings us to the second, unmistakable sign of a foolish person: constant blaming. Foolish people are often experts in one specific skill: making excuses. To them, nothing is ever their fault. A failed project, the market was too competitive, a missed promotion, the boss clearly has favorites, a strained friendship. They just couldn't handle my honesty. But let's be honest. Down, we all know that blame is just a shield. It's a convenient way to avoid facing uncomfortable truths. The problem is, that same shield eventually becomes a prison, one that traps them in cycles of stagnation and prevents any real growth. Take Lisa, for instance, an event organizer I once worked with. She was in charge of planning a major conference. Everything depended on her coordination. But when the event ended in disappointment due to low attendance, Lisa immediately lashed out, blaming the marketing team for not promoting it properly. However, when the situation was reviewed, the truth came to light. Lisa had failed to send the event details on time. Her delay created a ripple effect that set the marketing campaign back from the very beginning. And even after this came out, Lisa continued to shift blame, pointing fingers at everyone but herself. The result: her team lost trust in her, her credibility plummeted, and eventually, Lisa had no choice but to step down from her role. That's the cost of avoiding responsibility. Yes, responsibility can feel heavy, it can sting, but it is also the gateway to transformation. Wise individuals own their mistakes, not because they enjoy criticism, but because they understand that truth brings growth. Stoic philosophy teaches us that mastering life begins with mastering responsibility. When something goes wrong, the wise person doesn't ask, "Who's to blame?" They ask, "What can I learn?" Or "What could I have done differently?" So the next time you find yourself shifting blame, ask yourself, have I really done everything I could? Is there a part of this outcome that I contributed to? Blaming others won't change the outcome, but taking responsibility, that can change you. Wise people don't run from their mistakes. They face them, they learn, they grow, and then they rise stronger. And so can you. Choose the path of truth, the path of accountability. That's where real growth begins. Now let's talk about the third sign of foolishness: arrogance over humility. Have you ever met someone who's always trying to prove they're the smartest person in the room? They speak more than they listen. They interrupt, dominate, and dismiss. It's not confidence, it's arrogance. And arrogance, it's more than just annoying, it's dangerous. It's not just a mask hiding insecurity. It's a wall that blocks growth, blocks learning, and eventually blocks success. Truly wise people don't need to prove anything. They listen more than they talk, because they understand one core truth: learning never ends. Take Michael, for example, manager at a large corporation. In every meeting, he would cut others off, talk over his colleagues, and even mock their ideas. He needed to be the smartest voice in the room. When one of his projects completely failed, Michael didn't hesitate. He blamed his team for not grasping his so-called brilliant ideas. But the truth, it was his arrogance, his refusal to listen, that derailed everything. When his boss later asked him to reflect on what went wrong, Michael had nothing meaningful to say. His ego had blinded him to the real reasons behind the failure. You see, humility is not about thinking less of yourself. It's about thinking of yourself less so you can focus on listening, learning, and growing. Stoic wisdom reminds us that new perspectives are the key to true understanding. We grow when we're brave enough to say, "I was wrong. I don't know, but I want to learn." If you ever feel the trap of arrogance creeping in, stop and ask yourself, am I trying to be right, or am I trying to grow? Do I want recognition, or do I want wisdom? True intelligence doesn't make others feel small. It helps them rise. And the truly wise don't let arrogance lead the way. They let humility be their compass, because only when the noise of pride quiets down can the voice of wisdom be heard. And yes, you can choose to be that wise person. We just explored how arrogance isolates us from truth. Now we shift to something just as critical, the lack of empathy. Because without empathy, not only do our relationships suffer, our very character begins to hollow from within. Let me tell you about a colleague I once worked with, Paul. Paul had a habit of complaining every time there was a project delay. But what made it worse was that he never bothered to understand why the delay happened in the first place. There was one particular instance that revealed this flaw clearly. A co-worker named Susan missed a deadline because her son had fallen seriously ill. It was a tough time for her, balancing work and the emotional weight of her child's condition. But Paul, he didn't ask questions. He didn't offer support. Instead, he publicly criticized her in front of the entire team. He didn't care about Susan's circumstances. He only cared about the result he expected. And in that moment, his lack of empathy didn't just hurt Susanette, revealed something deeply lacking in him. Fast forward 1 year, Paul found himself in a painfully similar situation. His own mother had fallen seriously ill, and he had to step back from work to care for her. It was then that it hit him. His past criticisms weren't just unfair, they were cruel, you see. The absence of empathy doesn't just make someone seem cold, blinds them to connection, blinds them to learning. And worst of all, it blinds them to growth through human relationships. Stoic philosophy reminds us, true wisdom doesn't come from knowing everything. It comes from understanding others, from building real, meaningful connections. Those who lack empathy not only close the door to emotional depth, they isolate themselves, leaving behind an impression of insensitivity and disconnect. But remember this, empathy is not weakness. It is a powerful bridge to wisdom, to humanity, and to healing. When you pause to truly listen to, really see the person in front of you, you don't just help them, you help yourself. Because in that shared space of understanding, you find insight, compassion, and strength. So if you ever feel disconnected or emotionally distant, start simple. Just listen, without judgment. That's the first step to opening your heart and mind. And from there, you'll find yourself moving closer to true wisdom. Now we arrive at the fifth sign of foolishness, the fear of change, the comfort zone. It feels warm, safe, familiar, but let's be real, it's also a prison. Those who fear change cling to old habits even when those habits no longer serve them. They're like children afraid of the dark, too hesitant to step outside into the unknown, but life doesn't wait. Life is a river, it flows, it bends, it constantly shifts. The wise learn to adapt and move with the current. The foolish, they try to hold water in their hands, only to watch it slip through their fingers. Let me share a story about Michael, a man who spent his entire life in a small, familiar neighborhood. He knew every face, every store, every sidewalk crack. It was his world and he loved it. One day, his adult children encouraged him to move to a new area somewhere with better opportunities, better healthcare, and more community support. But Michael resisted. "I know everyone here," he said. "Why would I leave?" But change doesn't ask for permission. Over time, his neighborhood shifted. Old friends moved away. The local stores closed. What was once familiar, slowly disappeared. Eventually, Michael made the decision to move closer to his children, and what he discovered surprised him. The new place, it brought comfort, and beyond that, to open doors to things he never imagined. New friendships, new experiences, even a new sense of purpose. Fear of change doesn't just keep us safe, it keeps us stuck. It holds us back from possibility. Stoic wisdom teaches us that change is inevitable. The only question is, will we resist it or embrace it? So the next time you feel yourself clinging to the past, ask, what's the worst that could happen if I take a step forward? But more importantly, what's the best? Life doesn't stand still. And if you don't learn to flow with it, you'll find yourself stuck in a world that's already moved on. Change isn't something to fear, it's something to grow from. Staying still may feel safe, but it's not where transformation happens. Finally, let's talk about the sixth sign of a foolish person: talking more than listening. We all know someone like this. Maybe it's a relative, a parent, an uncle, or even a sibling who insists they know everything. They dominate every conversation, interrupt others constantly, and rarely stop to listen. They love the sound of their own voice so much that they never hear anyone else. Let me tell you about John, a father I once knew. Every evening at dinner, his family would gather at the table. His kids would try to share stories from school, things that excited them, things that bothered them. But John, he took over the moment he sat down. He would talk non-stop about his opinions, his day, his experiences, never once asking how theirs had been. Over time, the kids stopped trying. Why speak when no one listens? This habit, talking more than listening, is not just inconsiderate. It is a clear sign of foolishness. Because those who never listen, never learn. And those who never learn, stay stuck. We just saw how speaking too much and listening to little can silently damage the very people we love the most. And when that habit becomes routine, it doesn't just affect conversations, it tears at the very fabric of connection. Let me take you back to John, the father who unintentionally turned every family dinner into a one-man show. His children came home from school eager to share their stories, small victories, funny moments, things that meant something to them. But every time they tried to speak, John would interrupt, diverting the moment to retell one of his tales from years ago. Convinced it carried more weight, and it didn't stop there. When his wife gently suggested new ways to improve the family's financial situation, offering practical, thoughtful ideas, John immediately dismissed her. He cut her off, insisting, "My way has always worked. There's no need to change now." What's most tragic is John didn't even realize what he was doing. He didn't see how his actions made his family feel invisible. He didn't notice the quiet disappointment in his kids' eyes. He didn't hear the silence that followed when his wife stopped offering suggestions altogether by failing to listen. John wasn't just talking over people. He was creating a rift, a growing emotional gap where love and respect should have lived. Listening isn't a passive act. It's not just sitting quietly while waiting for your turn to speak. Listening is active. It requires presence, patience, and a genuine desire to understand, not respond. Stoic philosophy teaches that listening is the path to wisdom. It's in the silence when we truly absorb someone else's perspective that understanding begins to bloom. But talking without listening, that's like planting seeds in barren soil. No matter how many words are sown, nothing will grow. So if you recognized yourself, even just a little, in John's story, don't feel ashamed, feel empowered. Because awareness is the first step toward change. Next time your child opens up about their day, pause. Next time your partner offers a perspective you hadn't considered, breathe. Instead of rushing to speak, choose to listen, not to respond, but to understand. When you do this, something incredible happens. Conversations become connections, and your home becomes a place where everyone feels heard, valued, and respected. Remember, the wise person listens. The foolish one only talks. So we've walked through the 6 signs of a foolish person. But before you click away and start asking yourself, wait, does this mean I'm foolish? Take a breath. The truth is we've all been there. At some point, each of us has fallen into one or more of these behaviors. Maybe we've acted arrogantly. Maybe we've resisted change because it felt scary. Maybe we've talked too much and listened to little. But here's the key insight. Recognizing these signs isn't about shaming yourself, it's about growth. It's about seeing clearly, taking responsibility, and choosing to be better. Stoic philosophy reminds us that wisdom doesn't come from always being right. It comes from being teachable, from admitting mistakes, learning from them, and choosing to evolve. In fact, each of these foolish traits is actually a hidden gift, a mirror showing us where we can grow, a chance to become more aware, more compassionate, more wise. So, if you saw yourself in anything we've talked about today, don't panic, don't retreat, accept the invitation, step out of the comfort zone, blame less, listen more, welcome change, even when it feels uncomfortable, because this journey we're on, it's not for the perfect, it's for the brave, the ones who can look in the mirror and say, I can do better. And that's the heart of it all. Foolishness is temporary, but wisdom is a journey, and you don't have to walk it alone. So keep growing, keep learning, keep showing up for yourself and for others. And if this message resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's keep walking this path together, one meaningful lesson at a time. Thanks for watching.